U.S. President Donald Trump is delaying imposing further trade tariffs on Chinese goods. These were due to come into effect on the 1st of March. Trump says the countries had productive talks on some of the difficult issues dividing them. To discuss this, I'm joined by our U.S. correspondent, Daniel Ryntjes. Daniel, good evening. Thanks very much for your time. How are the people reading this? Do they see it as, reality setting in on the part of Trump, or as a concession, olive branch that is sending? What are people saying in the U.S.?
Donald Trump has been a very divisive president, as you very well know. And even among his supporters, there's been concern about the possibility of not doing a deal because, in many states, particularly the agricultural states, and also in some of these Rust Belt states, as they're called, former industrial areas, they've been really feeling the impact of the tariffs against China. So they've been willing to generally give him the benefit of the doubt. But this is where the rubber hits the road. And so if they don't reach a deal, this could provide a lot of ammunition to the Democrats. But if they reach a deal and it's not considered to be strong enough in terms of getting concessions from the Chinese on the restructuring of the US-China relationship, then I think the Democrats will again have ammunition to go after Trump and say, well, this deal maker just hasn't come up with the goods. That being said, he does have rather a tough negotiating team in front of him, so the stage is set for something that looks like Trump can really sell to his base as being one of his major achievements going into the elections in less than 2 years' time.
Has anyone shed any light into what Mr. Trump refers to as substantial progress?
Well, yes, there have been a lot of leaks in recent days, and it suggests that they have been able to make progress on, for example, the issue of technology transfer. So when US companies are keen to invest in China, they often have to give up some of their crown jewels of intellectual property, or else there is a perception among many American companies that Chinese hackers will be trying to get in on some of the information that will give them a technological edge in the future. So though on the technology front we are nowhere near reaching a situation where there is no tension, especially with a massive legal case over Huawei, the Chinese telecom company here in the United States. Nonetheless, it looks as though they've been able to make some progress on technology and intellectual property. And also, I think the Chinese are prepared to offer to buy more American goods and lower the trade deficit. That's something that Donald Trump has had as a campaign priority.
In which areas has there been no movement at all, or very little?
Well, as I was saying, I have a suspect that with the Huawei deal, there's probably going to be very little progress. And the reason I say that is because it's now in the justice system. And so for Donald Trump to be able to sort of deal make on that particular issue, he would have to, in a sense, go to the Justice Department and say, hey, guys, we now need you to reverse course. It wouldn't be in keeping with the US system of separation of powers, and it would be very difficult. But on the other hand, there could be some kind of agreement in which they could reach an agreement, a non-prosecution agreement, where Huawei would agree to pay certain fines and they'd sort of reverse it that way. So that's possible. But in terms of the overall structuring of the Chinese economy, Americans have complained that the Chinese basically come and they produce lots and lots of goods with the help of the state. These state-owned companies are very strong in China. I don't see the Chinese reversing course on that anytime soon. It's such an integral part of their economy. And there have been plenty of reports to suggest that at this point in the political cycle, the Chinese are not minded to make those kinds of concessions. They're actually feeling a little insecure at the moment about some of the domestic pressures they face, and therefore I think we'll probably see some pushback on that.
Now, these tariffs were due to come into effect on the 1st of March, which there's now been a delay. Has there been any new date set?
Well, no. And what this suggestion is that Donald Trump, once he has sufficiently lined up, or his advisors have sufficiently lined up a deal, he'll then formally invite President Xi to Mar-a-Lago, his Florida club, where he feels very comfortable. It may happen mid to late March, and then once that's done, they can iron out the remaining differences in the negotiating positions. So I think on both sides, the Chinese and the American negotiators, they're going to want to have ironed out almost everything and leave the two leaders with a small amount of negotiating to do. You may ask, what's that going to involve? Well, one of the things is the possibility of how the Americans verify that the Chinese do what they say they will do. And I'm sure the Chinese will be saying, look, if we make this deal, we want all these tariffs to go out the window. All these tariffs you've imposed are having an impact on the global economy. Please stop it. And I think the Americans, from their domestic point of view, will be under pressure to say, we want to see some results before we unwind the rest of these tariffs.
Daniel, thank you very much as our U.S. correspondent on President Donald Trump's decision.